Welcome back to the channel. As you guys already saw on the preview, we're gonna be talking about this specific landscape, and it's gonna be the front yard. And again, I'm gonna go back to the small areas. Now I know there's a lot of those out there, and there's a lot of people that have been, depending on certain states, they want to go for a more xeriscape type of landscape, just because of the area where they live is going to be like a sort of deserty type, or they just like that area where they don't have to mow anything, and this would be the perfect thing for you. So small disclaimer, this is my design, and if you guys want to use them, you definitely can. But that being said, let's get right into what's going on. Now I'm going to give you a bit more of details as far as what this entails, as far as measurements, that type of thing. So if this is something that works for you, definitely use it, right? So the yard, the front yard, it's not very big, and I'm only talking about that space right in between the street and the actual entrance of the house, not the side, because there is a section, but that's not really big, it's not super complex either, but let's focus on that small section right there. Now this specific one was approximately 16 feet by 25 wide or long, I guess. Yeah, 16 wide by 25 long. And then on the opposite side, between where you have that pathway, which is about 5 feet, or actually it is 5 feet, you have 7.5 feet, and again 25 feet. So let's talk about what we did over here. So in order to kind of make this area super nice, and again going with that xeriscape theme, what we did is that we kind of set ourselves with a dry riverbed. Now this dry riverbed actually had no functionality, just because in this case all the gutters were on this side of the house, which for this case it wasn't really doing a whole lot other than making the area look good. Now it doesn't mean that it wouldn't be able to catch any water in position to bring it out, but as opposed to having a gutter that would be there and then connecting that below the ground and kind of putting it to daylight there, well, this doesn't have that. But if in your case you happen to have that, you know what, go ahead and use it, to connect some of those there, so when it rains and or snows, or depending on where you are, maybe it's just rain, this is actually a functioning, if you will, water feature, well, when it's raining at least. So that's kind of the measurements that we are working with here. Now I'm gonna kind of center myself with the dry riverbed, approximately, just because it's not a straight line, but to give you an idea, it's about, and I do have my notes here with me, and I talked a few times about this. If you have a notebook, just take some notes, right? Take a little bit of what's going to happen there when you're working with your measurements, and that way when you're drawing, which by the way, if you haven't seen my video on that, 101 landscape, drawing, it's going to be right there. You guys can click on that, and there's a few tips as to what you can do to get that going. But let's say that you're already on that design phase and you have the paper and everything else. So from the center to where the driver bed starts, it's about 13 or so feet, and the actual driver bed is approximately between 3 and 4.5 feet. Now, the reason why I say this is because I generally try not to make my driver beds on one same size. I try to make them, very natural and deliberate with the curves and turns. That way, it makes it look like, what you actually would see in a river. If you've ever been to one of those, you'll see how it's not really one straight line, unless, it's man-made type of thing. But for the most part, they'll curve quite a bit, and sometimes they'll be a little bit narrow, then it kind of opens up a bit, and then kind of does the same thing over and over again. So what we did in this case is that we kind of started close to the house, and what we did is that we put an accent boulder. Now, depending on where you are, you can use many types of accent boulders, maybe some granites, or maybe some river boulders, maybe some moss type. Those are super cool to look at. If you were to put a few there, it will look just really good. In this case, we only kind of focus on one to start on that point kind of next to the house and kind of move away from the house. And so what we did is that we started there, kind of went across, as I was saying, between 3 and 4.5 feet, and as we kind of curved around across the sidewalk into the other section, so it's almost like the sidewalk was just put there after, kind of thing, that sort of theme. And then on the sides we put a little bit of wood mulch. In this case is a cedar type of mulch. You guys can definitely use whatever you guys prefer. And again, similar situation, not necessarily a specific one measurement kind of fits all. You can definitely, make it a little bit different. Now, it's roughly on both sides about 2 to 3 feet, and it kind of has the same theme, which it kind of opens up a bit, it kind of closes up and opens up again, and that sort of thing. Now, in this area is where we want to put a lot of perennials, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But let me explain a bit more about the rocks. Kind of the rock thing is where I generally try and put different types of rock, just because I don't know, there's something about having only one that for me doesn't sit well. So I will always try to put maybe 2 or 3 depending on how big the area is, and it's just more for contrast and shape and textures, size. If you notice over here, we generally have 4 types of materials. So one of it being the cobblestone, which is from 6 to 12 inches, and then we have the cedar mulch, which is the wood, and then we have a 3/4 inch black granite, and then we have an alpine gray river mix. So again, going for different sizes, different textures, from the cobblestones, then we go to the wood, and then we go to the granite, which is more of a gray, sort of darker gray, and then as we kind of move away, it gets again to that sort of lighter gray with whites. Again, I like to play around with that a lot. I just like it because it gives it more interest, especially if you kind of walking along into the house. It just makes it look even nicer. Now, this gets enhanced when you add the shrubbery to it. So we've been talking a lot about the materials so far, and just to give you an idea, with the materials, again, I try not to do a lot of straight lines, and it doesn't mean you can't do straight lines. You definitely could if you wanted to, but in this case, we want to do like that very natural, native sort of river sort of look. In this case, a driver bed. So we kind of have a bit of the flow with the lines, and we do the same thing in this case, which is we only have about maybe 2.5 feet of rock of one type, which is the alpine granite or alpine river mix, and then we kind of move to the black granite, again about 2.5 feet or so, and then we go to the mulch, and then we go to the driver bed, and again it goes over and over again. And so it's a little on the symmetrical side, give or take, not necessarily. I mean, it is, but it's because it's not straight lines, it's not 100%, but it does have that sort of feeling of there is balance, even though there's a few materials going, as far as what we are doing with this, we're kind of playing with the different textures and materials. So now that we sort of talk about that in the sizes that you can use, actually, now let's talk a little bit about what we use. Now, we only use one tree in the front just because of how much space we were dealing with. And so that being said, we did use Tartarian maple for the front. It's going to give you some of those nice red colors, obviously with some of those greens. That was just going to be for the tree itself. And we did use use two evergreens for this one. So one of them is going to be the mugo pines, which were closer to the house, and there are different kinds of mugo pines that you can use, and some of those will be, you know, larger and wider depending on the ones that you are looking for. There are dwarf types as well, so kind of keep that in mind. If you want it more for privacy, you might just want to go with a regular kind that could grow quite tall. But if you don't want, say, to block a window, then maybe get like a dwarf one where it's only going to grow about 5 to 6 feet. And you can, if needed, kind of take a little bit off the top to kind of make it cleaner if that's what you're going for. At the same time, the other thing that we also use were the globe spruces. Now, two different types of evergreens. One is a pine, one is a spruce. One is going to be more of that sort of darker green. The other one's going to be more of that sort of blue kind of green mix. And with the name, it is more on the globe. It's obviously not going to be a sphere, but it's going to be more round. So if you are into those, you can definitely use those. Now, if you want to use something a little bit lower to the ground, you can always use junipers if that's something that you want to go with. But speaking about evergreens, in this case, we also use some kinnikinics, where I have spoken about them before, where depending on where your house is located and how much sun it gets, you may want to consider them, especially if it has more on the shade side of things, being that those are going to be lower to the ground. But technically speaking, they are going to be on the evergreen side of things, the broad ever leaves type of thing. But you can use those as well. Gives you a bit of that sort of color, shiny leaves, sort of, you know, sort of smaller oval-ish type of leaves that you can use, and that's going to go really well with perennials. Now, perennials, there's many types that you can use. In fact, I don't want to even limit to what you can use. I mean, you can do daylilies, you can do daisies, you can do hyssop, you can do phlox. There's so many out there and so many cool colors that, you know, yarrows, you know, for instance, Susan Buckeyes, and there's just so many out there, coneflowers, right? Now, one thing I would definitely say though is that if you are going to be using a lot of perennials, make sure that depending on what you want to use, maybe have the smaller ones closer to the riverbed, and you kind of move from there kind of out for sizes, right? So you don't have the smaller ones and you can't even tell where they are. So maybe if you have a few of the smaller ones right next to it, as you kind of move away from it, you may have some taller ones, and then you can transition from that to shrubs. Shrubs, we don't have a lot of them going on here. We have a few spireas, a few potentias going on here, and the same goes for grasses. Yes, ornamental grasses, we used a few of those, and specifically we only used the feathery grass, even though you can use other kinds, especially if you like more of the reds. There's definitely a lot of those out there that you can use, but if you want to kind of have something sort of taller with that sort of wheat looking type, this would be a great one. But if you kind of want something a bit shorter, maybe that sort of bluish color, similar to the globe spruce, maybe something like an oat or avena grass, those would also work really well. They're gonna be a bit smaller, a little more pointy, but they look great as well. As far as shrubs, as I mentioned, we have not very many. We did use a snowman spirea, which, you know, by the name, it has the white flowering. We have some blue spirea, which is going to be more on the purple sort of blue. It does attract quite a few bees, which I gotta say, I'm totally on them coming over so they can take care of, you know, the area and make it even nicer. But some people have allergies, so you'll have that in mind as well. And then also some Goldrush Pontentillas, which is gonna give you more on the yellow side of things. And that's kind of it for this area. Not super complex, not super big, especially if you live like in the city. Again, you may have to modify depending on where you are. And if you want to use something different, maybe something even faster, like maybe the dry riverbed, but maybe even add to that a water feature, yeah, by all means, go ahead and do it. So what are your thoughts on this? Is this something that maybe could work for you? Let me know in the comments. If you've done your own project and you want to showcase it, let me know, reach out to me, and I'll definitely like to kind of see what's going on there and yeah, maybe potentially even show it here on the channel. Anyways guys, that's kind of it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. I have more videos of this type of thing, and the idea behind this is to help you when you are designing your house, and that way it becomes an area where you want to really look at, and your neighbors are just jealous of you, and your friends want to come over just because it's so nice. Anyways guys, if you like any of this, we would appreciate the thumbs and the subs, and we will see you guys in the next video. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and have a good one. Bye.